Welcome to today's webinar. Before we get started today, I want to make a few brief announcements. We know many of you are listening in from far away and can't attend local events or programs. That's why we provide this free webinar series. We host multiple webinars per month, so please visit our website to view the current schedule for 2018. Simply visit our website at www.johnson-center.org and click on the webinars link on the right-hand side. New webinars and events are often added, so if you are not on our email list, I encourage you to visit our website and click on the Join Our Email List link that appears on the homepage. To get instant news and events from the Johnson Center, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as we often announce grant and scholarship opportunities, research opportunities, and special events and presentations there. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Johnson Center. There you will find a library of several of our past presentations. We have many exciting programs coming up this summer, including our social skills group and sibling camp, with grants and scholarships available for these programs, as well as for diagnostic services and counseling. We will also host a series of free workshops for parents with free childcare available, including one coming up in June on ADHD. Check out our Facebook page or website blog for more information. Be sure to follow our colleagues at the Autism Research Institute as they host their own webinar initiative, and they share some great resources on their website and social media pages. If you would like a certificate of attendance after today's webinar, look for a follow-up email in your mailbox 1 hour after the webinar concludes, or look for the link on our YouTube channel in the webinar description. It will contain instructions on how to get your certificate. If you have questions during the live webinar, you may type them into your GoToWebinar control panel. If you are watching a recording of this webinar, you may email questions to the presenter at info@johnson-center.org. Today's webinar is presented by Dr. Claire Schutte. Dr. Schutte is the staff psychologist here at the Johnson Center, and she brings her expertise, compassion, and understanding to all she does here, whether it is completing assignments and diagnostics, running social skills and sibling camps, or working on her research projects. Please welcome our presenter, Dr. Schutte.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today as we cover this important topic on benefits, accommodations, and advocacy in employment for individuals with autism. I'm Claire Schutte, and I'm going to be discussing with you the benefits of hiring employees with autism. I'm going to be talking about a variety of different accommodations that can set individuals up for success in the workplace, as well as individual self-advocacy and how the community can better advocate for serving individuals with autism in the workplace. Okay, and just to review our agenda, let's see here. I'm going to start with discussing the variety of unique benefits that individuals with autism can bring to work. Like I said, then I'll be discussing how to accommodate during the interview and in the workplace. And I'll wrap up with talking about the importance of self-advocacy as well as advocacy on a wider scale regarding employment and autism. For additional information on employment and autism, we have some great previous webinars on related topics that can be found on our YouTube channel. Specifically, we did a transition series a while back that has a dedicated section to employment that covers more specifics about things like assessment of skills and interests and kind of planning for employment. So be sure to check those out as well. Information on employment and autism is often associated with difficulties of finding a job, as well as unemployment rates among individuals with autism. The rates of unemployment are rather high. Some rates suggest around 75% and above of individuals with autism aren't in paid jobs and are unemployed. And this is likely due to several reasons, such as the difficulties and symptoms that accompany autism, difficulty getting past the interview stage, and the workplace not accommodating or meeting the needs of the individual with autism. For the next few slides, I'm going to be focusing more on the positives, on the benefits that individuals with autism can bring to the workplace. Luckily, these positive characteristics are getting more and more recognized, and many big companies are making exciting changes and are acknowledging the positives related to a diverse workplace and the special skill set that those with autism can bring. I'm going to be discussing some common qualities and characteristics of individuals with autism in the next slide. But it's important to remember that all individuals with autism are different and are going to bring different strengths and needs to the workplace. So these are going to be some generalizations, but as always, it's important to focus on the individual and what their special and unique skill set is. Neurodiversity is a term that refers to a variety of unique cognitive qualities associated with autism, as well as with learning differences such as ADHD or learning disabilities. Individuals with autism often have ways of thinking that are very outside of the box, so very creative ways of thinking, which can make them creative thinkers and problem solvers. In certain job situations, there might be difficult problems that employees are having difficulty cracking, and an individual with autism may be able to have a unique perspective and ways of solving some of those harder problems. Precision and technical tasks can be an area of strength. This can help individuals produce very quality work with low rates of error. Also, many times individuals with autism have areas of significant cognitive strengths, kind of like splinter skills or areas of very particular strong ways of thinking that can make them very skilled in that area. For example, a very technical skill related to computer programming or video games. Additionally, they can be experts in their area of special interest. Many individuals on the spectrum do have particular areas of special interest, and this can provide a job asset. Individuals with autism often thrive with repetitive tasks, and they aren't as prone to get burnout on repetition as other employees might. And they can also have really great memories for facts and technical information that can bring another strength to the workplace. So these are just some examples of some common characteristics and strengths and qualities that individuals with autism have that can make them great employees. Not all, but many individuals with autism are also very good rule followers and will adhere nicely to workplace rules and guidelines, making it easier for employers. So they might have really great attendance and not miss work often. Additionally, things like routine and schedule are preferred, which can also be a strength. And of course, again, many of these characteristics are generalizations. Not every individual with autism is going to be really great at following the rules or keeping on schedule, but it's important to get to know the individual on their level and learn what their personal strengths and weaknesses are. Many larger companies are starting to recognize the benefits of hiring individuals with autism and the unique strengths that they bring to the workplace. This is from an article in Forbes in 2016. on the benefits of recruiting employees with autism spectrum disorder. And this was a quote from Gary Pisano that was featured in this article. It states, "Their intellectual horsepower is quite high. They do things differently and they behave differently, but the question is, can you turn that into a virtue?" That's part of the thinking on this idea of neurodiversity, that we need to do better when we mix people who think differently or are wired a bit differently. Many companies are starting to recognize the benefits of hiring employees on the spectrum, as well as adding diversity and inclusion to their workplace. These are just a few of the many larger companies that are recruiting and supporting potential employees with autism. So it is very exciting that lots of these big companies are creating programs and are recognizing the benefits that individuals with autism can bring. So I wanted to feature some of these. Again, these are just some examples. Microsoft, they have an inclusive hiring program. This program uses an inclusive approach to support individuals on the autism spectrum. And they offer a really neat hiring program, and this is a multiple-day hands-on academy that focuses on workability, team projects, skills assessment. And the event gives potential job candidates an opportunity to show off their unique talents, and they have a chance to meet the hiring managers and the teams while also learning about Microsoft as an employer. The software company SAP has created a pilot program with a goal to hire around 650 people with autism by the year 2020. And that would actually represent 1% of its total staff. They have a program, they've developed specific programs that support inclusion and accommodate the needs of diverse workers. Walgreens is another big company that is very supportive of diversity and inclusion in the workplace. They've designed facilities and training programs to create more opportunities for people with disabilities. They have a program called the Transitional Work Group Program, as well as Retail Employees with Disabilities Initiative. And then another company that has also been working towards more inclusion and special programs is Freddie Mac. They've partnered with the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network in 2012 to create an autism internship program. And this program helps match the business needs with the unique qualities and skills that individuals with autism spectrum disorder might bring to the workplace. So this is all very exciting. And again, these are just some of the companies that are doing this. And these are some examples of very big companies that are actually carving out really neat and creative programs that help meet the needs of individuals on the spectrum. But even more importantly, they're recognizing the really unique and strong assets that individuals on the spectrum can bring. Hiring individuals with autism and other disabilities, it helps promote several attributes for the companies themselves. This includes creating a culture of acceptance, acceptance of diversity, inclusion, and social responsibility. Social responsibility is the idea that businesses should balance their work with activities that benefit society and the community. So I just wanted to highlight, in addition to hiring quality workers with autism, it can also help promote an overall culture shift within the workplace that can bring many benefits as well. So not only does hiring individuals with autism have a lot of benefits for the workplace, it also brings a lot of benefits to the individual with autism. It can provide a sense of independence as well as financial independence. We all know just the financial strain that many families experience who have children with autism. So when the adult with autism can get compensated for their work, it can provide a lot of financial support to the family. Having employment helps to fine-tune and build additional skills for the individual. And very importantly, it can help, gaining that sense of independence can really help promote the individual's confidence as well. It can help add to routine and structure in daily life, which is often important for individuals on the spectrum. It can help support their interests and skills if the job matches the individual's interests. And finally, although the social interaction in the job might be difficult, having a job creates socialization opportunities for the individual with autism and can help build some of their social skills in the work environment. These are just some of the examples of the benefits of employment to the individual. There's many more than these, and again, they're going to vary across the individual and the family situations. But it brings a ton of positives to the individual as well. And promoting employment and supporting employment for individuals on the spectrum also creates positive community impact. For one, it helps decrease the unemployment rate and relieve some financial burden of the government and other funded services. It helps contribute to positive community morale, promotes acceptance, inclusion, and diversity in the community. So we've reviewed all of the benefits that individuals with autism can bring to the workplace, as well as how that can trickle down into benefiting the employer, the workplace, as well as the community. Now I'm going to be talking about specifically how to accommodate employees with autism and how to really set them up for success when both applying for a job as well as once they're in the job. So in terms of talking about employment planning and fit, it's very important that vocational support and planning starts early in the transition planning phase. So this would be in high school when transition planning starts. Employment and planning for employment may not be the best fit for all individuals on the spectrum, so that's something that needs to be considered. Or paid employment, may not be the best fit. It's going to depend on the individual's abilities and needs. But if future employment is a good fit for the individual, then exploration of careers, skills, and strengths is important early on. I did talk about this in my previous transition planning webinar. So if you're interested in learning more about how to assess interest and skills, I would recommend viewing our previous transition series on our YouTube channel. As the person approaches the age in which they're going to want to work, finding support through agencies, through programs, or individual career support services is important to help with the job search, to help with things like applying for jobs, interviewing skills, as well as training for once they start working. And I want to stress the importance of finding a good fit with the place of employment. You want to make this based on skills, but also on the individual's interests. We all know that the more you're interested in a job, the more motivated and confident you're going to be, and the more fulfillment will come with it. I think individuals with autism, they're going to have more challenges in employment, likely more than the average person. So having that motivation is even more important. It's also important to mention, again, that paid employment is not always attainable or appropriate for the individual, but there are other options that can be very fulfilling, such as volunteering or participating in a vocational day program. There's also day programs that focus more on things like independent living skills or more kind of basic technical skills and things that can still provide that routine and structure for the adult with autism. Interviews are tough for most of us, and I'd say for almost all of us, they're often sources of nervousness and anxiety. This is multiplied a lot for those with autism, and the job interview can be a huge roadblock to employment for individuals with autism. If you think about it, things that are considered to impress during a job interview are some of the areas that individuals with autism struggle the most, such as things like confident eye contact and body language, answering open-ended questions such as, "So, tell me about yourself." Additional difficulties such as anxiety, reading social cues and nonverbal behavior, sensory sensitivities, other social difficulties, things like making small talk can really compound the difficulty of the interview. And I think this is a main area that makes it difficult for individuals with autism to get jobs. But as we also know, the person who interviews best does not always equal the best person for the job. So it's important that there's support and preparation for the interview for the individual with autism. And there's also different accommodations for the interview that the workplace can provide, and I'm going to be talking about those. But things like job coaching can help with role-playing interviews, practicing for the interview. But it's really important that a lot of focus does go into preparation for the interview because so much relies on that. But luckily, workplaces are becoming more aware of the difficulties that individuals with autism face in the interview process and are starting to provide accommodations for that. And I'm going to provide some examples here. So I wanted to share a video of an interview. This is an interview series that was created by Fraser. They've put together a program for employers on hiring and supporting individuals with autism. The video that I'm going to show, it depicts a woman named Brianna who's interviewing for a customer service position. And as you'll see in the video, she brings with her a notebook where she has some notes written down, which is a helpful kind of accommodation or support for an individual with autism, is to have things written out already that they can glance at. You'll notice some of the areas that she struggles with. You'll notice some differences with her eye contact and just the flow of her answers. So let me pull that up. But I also wanted to mention that Fraser, they had some other helpful resources. There's other videos that they provide that are interview examples, and then they also have a tip sheet on helpful tips for the interview. So let me go ahead and pull this video up.
Brianna, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
I am a student at St. Catherine University, majoring in history.
Okay.
I'm interested in different areas of history.
Uh-huh.
I enjoy working with people.
Great.
I am a dedicated worker, and I'm conscientious, courteous, and kind.
Excellent. Great. What do you expect from your supervisor in a position?
Well, I learn best when I'm given clear, precise instructions. I'm a very visual learner, so I would like to be shown how. I would like my supervisor, when they're training me, to show me how to do some things so that I can get a feel for it. I kind of like my employer to understand that sometimes working in a team can be a little bit challenging for me, since I tend to overextend myself or take it too much. So I think it would help for someone to tell me clearly what they would expect of me, but then also to kind of give you some guidelines for setting boundaries for myself.
Okay.
For me personally, it would have been helpful for me to have the questions ahead of time. Sometimes I do struggle with sometimes with on-the-spot questions, because I'm the type of person that I like to know what to expect before. I like to have some idea of what to expect before it happens, and so on-the-spot questions can.
Okay, so hopefully all of you were able to hear that interview with Brianna. And as you saw at the end there, she shares that one thing that would have been useful for her, and this is a helpful accommodation that can be provided for interviews, is to get either example questions beforehand that the individual can prepare, or to provide the actual questions before, so the individual can develop and practice their answers and communicate what they want to share most effectively. So here's some additional accommodations that employers can provide to make the interview process more successful. One thing is providing an outline or a schedule of what the individual can expect during the interview process. Again, providing questions prior to the interview so the individual can prepare, can know what to expect, and can best communicate their answers. Another very helpful tip is to evaluate using a more hands-on or performance-based tasks. Answering questions and communicating verbally isn't always the easiest or the most effective way that an individual with autism can communicate. So evaluating them during job-related tasks, or having different hands-on or team-based tasks, can be very useful. Be flexible. For example, if you notice that the individual is experiencing anxiety or might feel overwhelmed, provide them a break or ask them, do you need some time to think about your answer? So add in some flexibility, some checking in. Be as calm as possible. A lot of times employers or interviews can be classically kind of cold or very formal. This isn't necessarily bad for the individual with autism, but try to be as calm and as warm as possible to help relieve some anxiety. It can also be useful to allow the individual to perhaps write or type out their answers. Again, verbal communication isn't always the most successful way of communicating for an individual with autism. So being flexible and providing different ways of providing their answers. Also, be sensitive to any sensory disruptions in the environment. For example, in the room that you're conducting the interview, you don't want it to be too loud or to have too bright of lights, any disruptive noises. Individuals on the autism spectrum do tend to have different sensory sensitivities and can get overwhelmed more easily. So having, for example, multiple interviewers at the same time asking questions might be a bit overwhelming. So having one interviewer at a time might be less overwhelming. Dimming lights, having a quiet room. These are all things that can make the interview more successful. But I do really like the idea, again, of having more performance-based and hands-on tasks. Another idea that's not on here is having an extended interview. So not just having a 1 hour or a 1-day interview, but evaluating the potential candidate over several days and mixing in a variety of different activities. This is going to give the employer a better sense of their skills. It's going to decrease the pressure from just having that 1 hour interview process. A lot of resources have been developed for employers and companies that are interested in recruiting and supporting individuals on the autism spectrum. That video that I shared from Fraser, as I mentioned, they have a great resource called Autism's Hidden Strengths, interviewing and hiring individuals with autism. As I mentioned, they have a helpful tip sheet on there. Autism Speaks has several tools, both for employers and potential employees with autism. They have a variety of different toolkits and resources for both. In the program EARN, this is the Employer Assistance and Resource Network on Disability Inclusion. They promote workplace diversity, and they provide employers with resources and support for doing so, such as on trainings and related issues, tips, etc. These are just some of the examples of resources, and more are getting developed as the need is, as more awareness for the needs are increasing. So on here, I've provided some specific accommodations that employees with autism can be supported in the workplace to help set them up for success. It's important that employers create open communication, as well as research and receive training on how to best accommodate individuals with autism. And it's also important that employees with autism, as well as those who are providing support for them, help them advocate for what accommodations they need. Again, everyone with autism is unique in their own ways, and different accommodations are going to help them more with others. So again, this needs to be on multiple levels. Employers and businesses need to receive their own training on autism and how to best accommodate. But there also needs to be open communication between the individual advocating for their own needs as well as those supporting them. And this can also be an ongoing process and a learning curve for both the employer and the employee. They might start to recognize as they start working what accommodations are helping them, or you know, this would help. I've noticed that this really helps. Let's try this. So it's a process. Some examples of workplace accommodations are listed up here. So first, there can be different environmental accommodations. This is related to anything regarding the work environment that can be changed. So this could be something such as creating a cubicle or a more enclosed workspace rather than an open communal workspace. Many of the tech industries and workplaces do have more open work environments where everyone is kind of working in one general communal area. This might create more distractions for the individual with autism. There's going to be more noise, more conversation. It's just more open. So creating an individual work area or something that's more sectioned off or at less risk of having a ton of distractions might be more appropriate. It could also be things like changing the lighting, putting an office in a quieter area of the room, or a different area of the building, anything related to the environment that might be changed or modified. Individuals with autism tend to be visual learners, so providing information with visuals such as graphs, pictures, providing modeling of a task, providing visual schedules, these can be very useful to an individual with autism. Also, self-monitoring strategies such as checklists, things like timers can help an individual keep track of their tasks and time better. Also, providing accommodations or modifications for communication as needed, such as communicating by email versus the phone, giving an outline before a meeting of what's expected for the individual to communicate. Headphones can help block out extraneous noise if the individual is distracted by noise. When giving information and providing tasks, providing the instructions both orally and written can help. Try to role play and practice different social situations, such as if the individual might have to have a phone call or an interaction with an unhappy customer, or meeting a new boss or a new employee. Role play, modeling, and practice can really help make that easier. And these are situations that might be particularly difficult for an employee with autism. And again, remember that consistency and structure is usually very important for an individual on the spectrum. So providing clear expectations, for providing prompts for any changes in schedule or unexpected meetings, making things as structured and consistent as possible can really help the individual thrive. And these are just some examples of a variety of different accommodations. Again, you're going to want to get to know the individual, and there should be open communication between the individual and those that support them if they do have job supports with the employer. And it's going to be an ongoing process and a learning curve of kind of tweaking here and there how to make the individual the most successful. And it's also important for employers to educate their managers and employees on autism and how to best support them. This should include what autism is, how it might manifest in the workplace, as well as how to set up an employee with autism for success. I want to share another video example. This was a video that was featured in February by CBS Sunday Morning, and I think it really summarizes a lot of what we've been talking about and provides some personal examples as well. So I'm going to pull that up.
The words "good work" are always good for an employee to hear. Of course, to receive that praise, you first have to be an employee, which for one group of talented but underrated people has often been a challenge. Until now. Lee Cowan reports our cover story.
27-year-old Christopher Polly thought he had it all figured out when it came to looking for a job.
So all of these are all the people you sent resumes to?
Yes.
Whoa.
He had a detailed spreadsheet of each and every position he applied for.
How many?
At least 600.
Wow.
But despite his degree in computer science from California Polytechnic State University, he went 2 years with barely a nibble.
Were you getting pretty discouraged?
Oh my gosh, my morale really started to drop towards the end. Like, there were days where I would either hardly fill out any applications at all or just simply not apply to anything.
He knew he had the smarts for most jobs. He was a former spelling bee champ, after all. But Christopher struggles with social and communication skills because he's also autistic. While precise numbers are hard to come by some estimates, at least 80% of adults with autism are unemployed, even though their IQs are often well above average.
This is called At Night in Dreams.
Sometimes their job skills can present themselves in unique ways. For Christopher, it's video games. His ability to recognize patterns and his acute attention to detail, both hallmarks of autism, make this look pretty easy. And they are the same skills he was hoping would impress prospective employers in the computer programming world. But he always had to get past that interview, which was a challenge at best.
Was there any in any of those interviews a time where you just wanted to tell somebody, look, I know my social skills maybe aren't quite what you expect, but I know I can do this job and I know I can do a really good job if you give me a chance?
Yes.
But you never said that to anybody?
Most of the time, no.
Because why?
I just wasn't comfortable because it makes me come across as desperate.
At Microsoft, however, there was no need to hide his autism. They were looking for it.
It's a talent pool that really hasn't been tapped.
Jenny LaFleury is the Chief Accessibility Officer.
There really is and was a lot of data on the table that said to us that we were missing out. We were missing out on an opportunity to bring talent in with autism.
So in a way, it sounds like
I apologize about that. It sounds like we're having some technical issues with the audio on the video. It was working earlier, so I'm not sure what that issue is. So I apologize. This is a really great video, and the link is provided here. So I encourage you to watch it. It has some great examples. The perspective of the young man that they feature, how many jobs he had to apply to, and how he finally found a good fit with an employer. And I also liked how they provide an example of kind of a more accommodating interview process and providing a more hands-on way of evaluating kind of in a more group setting the skill set. Again, the video can be found here. It was created by CBS Sunday Morning, and the title is Hiring Autistic Workers. This was from February of 2018, so it's a very recent video. Okay. I wanted to provide an overview of some different support services and programs that can also help support and accommodate employees with autism. I'm not giving a full overview of all of them, just for the sake of time. These are reviewed in some of our previous webinars in our transition series. But there are a variety of different support services that are available. This includes state and federally funded programs, as well as private programs. Vocational rehabilitation is a federally funded and state administered program. It provides any necessary support and training to make sure individuals with autism and other disabilities are able to get meaningful employment. So they might offer a variety of different services. This can be things like transition planning, finding and applying to jobs, job training, even interest and skills assessment. Supported employment agencies are programs that help individuals with disabilities obtain and maintain employment. They're often provided through vocational rehab or similar agencies, and available resources, they can vary state by state. They can provide support such as a job coach or an employment specialist, as well as a variety of other support services. Easter Seals often provides vocational programs across different states. This can include services such as vocational planning, assessment, support with finding a job, support in employment, as well as a variety of different day programs. And again, the different services that are provided by Voc Rehab or supported employment or agencies such as Easter Seals, they are going to vary from state to state, so it's important to look and see what services are provided in your area. Another great resource is finding a job coach, someone that can provide support on the job. They might also provide training outside of the job and work on refining specific skills. A job coach might be someone that supports the individual through most of their employment, but oftentimes their support would be faded out as they start to become more independent on the job. And that would be the eventual goal. Additionally, a therapist such as a behavioral analyst might provide specific work on vocational related goals. They may even provide some on-the-job supports to work on particular areas of skills in the job environment. There's also a variety of different residential and post-secondary programs that have been developed that can provide job support. These are programs such as the College Internship Program or the College Living Experience. They provide both higher education support as well as vocational supports. Additionally, many college campuses have career support services that can help students explore different jobs and plan for employment. There's a variety of different day programs available for adults with various disabilities. These types of programs can provide vocational and recreational type tasks. Oftentimes these might not include paid positions, but it can provide that structure and skill development that can be provided through employment. In addition to specific companies looking to hire individuals on the spectrum, many programs have been developed to help support individuals actually find a job. This is another exciting movement. And here's some examples here. And again, these are just some examples. Higher Autism and Spectrum Careers, they're basically job portals. Higher Autism is made for individuals on the spectrum. They have neat concepts like a job board, direct access to employment opportunities. They have a profile builder, simple job applications, and helpful resources for the workplace. Spectrum Careers also offers a job portal for job seekers, as well as for employers and support providers. And then MindShift partners with businesses to find tasks that are critical to the business but can be difficult to find workers who are able to focus and remain dedicated to the work. So basically it tries to match individuals with autism with companies that have specific tasks that might be a good fit. It assesses, trains, and employs individuals on the spectrum. So MindShift is another neat program that helps support individuals on the spectrum. And these are just some of the examples of those that are getting developed. So now we're going to move on to the last main topic of today. I'm going to be talking about advocacy. For individuals with autism, as well as for those who support them, it's critical that their needs are advocated for in the workplace. Whether to disclose having autism to a potential or a current employer is a personal question, and it can often be difficult to navigate. It's important to weigh the pros and cons and think about how the disclosure could help, or in some cases hinder. It can often help to provide the employer understand about how to best support the individual and certain behaviors that might make work more difficult. And even if having autism isn't fully disclosed, it's usually still beneficial to have a discussion of any differences in learning style, work, and communication preferences. So this could be something such as, I tend to be a visual learner, or sharing that I find communication by email to be better than in person. But again, disclosing having autism is a personal decision. It can bring many benefits and help the employer understand where the individual is coming from and how to best accommodate them. But it's not always going to be the best decision, and it's going to be a personal decision. I do like the book called Ask and Tell by Stephen Shore. It's a great resource for exploring disclosure and self-advocacy. It's important that individuals with autism are supported in developing their own self-advocacy skills as they transition, and especially if if their goal is to get employed. And it's helpful for employment for many reasons. It can provide a mutual understanding between the individual and the employer regarding how to best understand the individual with autism and what their needs are, and how to best support them. In an article by Autism Speaks, they define self-advocacy as asking for what you need, negotiating for yourself, so for example, working with others to reach an agreement that'll meet your needs, having a clear understanding of what your rights and responsibilities are in the workplace, knowing how to use the resources and supports available to you, and being able to communicate and explain autism to your employer if you are going to disclose having autism. So beyond just self-advocacy for the individual with autism, it's also important that parents and those that support and work with individuals with autism also advocate for support in the workforce. So it's important to find ways to get involved and to find areas of regarding employment and those with autism that you feel passionate about. Some important areas that can be brought up and discussed are the rates of autism and unemployment, and how this creates a very critical need, especially as the rates of autism are getting higher. There's going to be more need for employment supports and accommodations in the future. Try to have conversations and advocate for the benefits of hiring those with autism. Find parents and organizations who are creating job opportunities for those with autism and support those movements. And also help provide, if you do provide and work with those with autism, help provide resources to companies that may be a good fit. And join in movements and causes that you feel strongly about. Again, it's not just about the individual advocating themselves, but really for all of us that support those with autism and are involved with the autism community to advocate for this as well. Here's an example of advocating. This is from the Autism Empowerment Kit. The Global Impact Sourcing Coalition envisions a world in which all people have opportunities to obtain productive employment and decent work. These members are committed to increasing awareness and uptake of impact sourcing, an inclusive hiring practice that provides people from disadvantaged and vulnerable communities with access to foundational job opportunities and career employment, and ultimately contributes to improved social and economic well-being of families and communities. So this is a group that's specifically advocating for empowerment and support in meaningful employment for those with autism. So before we wrap up and move on to questions, I wanted to make a final note that a lot of times you have to get creative. As I've mentioned, each person with autism is different in their own ways and may not fit within the framework of certain jobs, resources, and programs. So you want to utilize their ideas and their support team to come up with the best fit for the individual. And this sometimes means reinventing the wheel a bit, or creating an informal program, or carving a job out for your loved one with autism. And here's a list of some resources. There's actually, this list has grown so much, and I've just highlighted a few of them here, as well as the resources I mentioned in the slides. HireAutism.org. As I mentioned, we have a transition series that's available on our YouTube channel where I touch on other important topics regarding employment. Autism Speaks has toolkits and employment resources on their website. Do to Learn is a great resource in general, but they have a job tips portion. I have 2 books on here, The Hidden Curriculum of Getting and Keeping a Job, as well as The Complete Guide to Getting a Job for People with Asperger's Syndrome. Asperger's on the Job is another book. And then at the bottom here, Life Journey Through Autism that can be accessed online, as well as the Ocali Employer Toolkit. Again, these are just a selection of some resources, and I also highlighted some programs and resources within the presentation. If you wanted to look back on any slides, this presentation will be published to our YouTube channel shortly after we wrap up today. So let's move on to some questions. Looks like we have a few minutes here. But before we do so, I hope that you found today's webinar useful, and I really wanted to highlight the strengths and benefits that individuals can bring to the workplace, and I hope I did that today. Okay, let's see. I'm just going to look over the questions here. Do all vocational rehab offices provide the same services? No, I think I mentioned this earlier. This can vary state to state. It's important to look up your local vocational rehabilitation office and see what services they specifically offer. Let's see. Here's a good one. Transportation is a big deal for my son's success at the job. Any suggestions on making getting to work easier for someone with autism who has to use public transportation? That's a very good question, and public transportation can be very overwhelming and can present some major roadblocks to successful employment. Just off the top of my head, some tips would be, 1, you can't practice enough. So start early and practice a lot. Bus schedules and things can be difficult. In many areas, there are specific buses for individuals with disabilities that might make it a little less overwhelming. But practice, practice, practice. Practice the route. Practice potential situations, such as if the bus is running late. Have someone go with the individual and help coach them through using the transportation, and use this as much as needed and then try to fade it out. So you might have a therapist ride with the individual on the bus until they're successful, and then gradually fade out the use of that therapist for the transportation. Use kind of supportive aids such as visual schedules. You might use things like prompts on the phone, little alarms that can help the individual get ready to go to the bus, things like the calendar timers. There's lots of different tools and strategies. And get creative. If public transportation is too tricky, maybe looking in to see if there might be a carpool available, for example, with another employee. Let's see. Here's kind of a general question. This one's a little hard to answer, but what is the best type of job for an individual with autism? This is really going to vary depending on the individual. Everyone has different areas of strengths and weaknesses. As I discussed, there are some general characteristics that can make certain jobs a better fit. So something like a job with good structure and consistency is going to generally be a job that would be a good fit for an individual with autism. So looking for that, but also trying to match the job with the individual's interests. So a lot of times we hear about tech companies creating programs and hiring individuals with autism specifically. This is because a lot of the skill set that they're looking for can be particular strengths for individuals with autism. But again, that's kind of a general characteristic, and it may not be the best fit for all individuals. You might have an individual who has a strong interest and connection with animals, for example, so working at a vet clinic or dog walking or something like that could be a better fit. Let's see. Is it recommended to go to college first? Again, this is going to be kind of on a case-by-case basis. For certain jobs, this is going to make the individual more competitive and maybe more likely to get hired. But higher education isn't always the best fit for all individuals with autism. So more of a vocational training type program and then a job might be a better fit. And I know I keep emphasizing fit, but that's so important. And not all individuals with autism are created equal. So again, it's going to depend on the individual. But going to college or some type of post-secondary program is going to prepare many individuals for a job later on, but it's all going to depend on what that job might look like and the individual. Let's see. Looks like we're out of time for questions. But I do appreciate your time today, and thank you for joining in on the webinar, and I hope that you found today's webinar useful. Again, please see our YouTube channel. We have a ton of great topics on there, and we have some previous webinars on vocation-related issues as well as transition issues, including employment, as well as independent living and other related topics. So it really is a great resource, and I encourage you to visit that. And thank you for your time and attention.